Where you are today is a result, is an aggregate, is a summation, is a totality of everything you've done to this point. Okay. It's just like an alcoholic or somebody on recovery or whatever. You cannot become your best you until you realize the darkest you, until you've hit essentially rock bottom. Or in other words, until you've taken full responsibility, right? Granted, there are some things that are out of your control that other people have done to you or did you wrong or whatever. But you have to take control of that too, right? Because you can find an excuse on a way out. Hey, they did that to me. It wasn't out of my control. But was it really out of your control? Bam. Yo, what's up, everybody? This is the End-to-End Podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Young Nguyen, affectionately called by my friends the Ninja or Prolific Ninja. And because my fans are my friends, you can call me Ninja too. This is the End-to-End Podcast, the Alpha to the Omega, the beginning to the end, talking about life, motivation, self-improvement, drive, entrepreneurship, and offering you morsels in this all-you-can-eat buffet called life. Back in a humid studio here in Houston, Texas. Glad to be back here. Everything seems to be progressing in this fourth quarter as well as it could be. As you all know, or if you're new to the show, I'm on, day 18 to 75 hard. This round, this is my fourth time doing it. This round, a little bit more taxing on the body. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because I'm doing the rucksack every time I do my outdoor, but it's a little bit tougher on this round. But that being paired with the idea of being talked into doing the half marathon in January, which, listen, y'all, I'm a sprinter kind of guy. The longest I've ever ran has been 2 miles, probably, if that. Not well. But a good friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, talked me into a half marathon, 13 miles in January. So trying to pair up the 75 hard with that now training for the half marathon. We'll see, man. I get tired driving 13 miles. So running it, walking it, I have no idea how it's going to work out. But it's been a good time. Into the fourth quarter, as I mentioned in my last podcast or the last episode, is that the end of the year, I like to accelerate into the end of the year while everybody else is decelerating. That creates a bigger gap between me and everybody else, my competitors or whoever my imaginary self is, imaginary competitor is. I'm widening that gap. And that way I'm literally running with the half marathon in January, but I'm running into 2024 while people are just slowly picking up in January. So great time. Happy to be here in the studio. Glad you're with me. Besides that, I like to, before I get into the topic of the episode, I always want to start every episode as I start my day with an expression of gratitude. I wake up every morning thankful for another day, to the universe, to God. And so now I start my podcast with an expression of gratitude. Thank you all of you out there for following, listening, commenting, and most importantly, sharing, subscribing to my podcast on all platforms. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. The audience is growing overwhelmingly to the thousands and thousands and thousands. So thank you very much. And if you're new to the show, this is done on my own time, I spend a lot of money. I got a full team here. They spend a lot of their time setting up to get this content out to you. So it's on my own dime and on my own time. So if you find value in this episode, or any other episode or anything, the reels that we clip and put onto the Instagram or the shorts that we put on YouTube, if you find any value, like I say, if your knowledge swole, share the show. That's how we grow. Please do comment, follow, share, and give us a 5-star rating or a thumbs up rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That helps us rank in the order of lifestyle and business podcasts. So thank you all very much for listening and following the show. Without you, we can't share our message and accomplish our mission, which is together, you and I, inspiring billions of people around the planet to do better, to be the best they can be. As I say, to live to their fullest controllable potential. That's our goal, helping people live to their fullest controllable potential. And so speaking of that goal, that's the topic of the episode today, which is as I'm going through 75 hard and getting, fine-tuning my mind and my body, and I feel fantastic, getting several compliments from random strangers. In any event, it dawned on me that I'm fine-tuning myself to be the best that I can be into the end of the year. And I would implore you or request you or challenge you to try to do the same. Okay, to try to do the same. And I'm not talking about physically and having to do all the fitness stuff or health stuff or the meal stuff or nutrition and all that. I'm just talking about being the best, living to your fullest controllable potential. And as I thought about that, I said, maybe there are steps to this. Maybe there are steps in order to be able to live to your fullest controllable potential, right? And so I realized that there actually are. Now, I don't know if there are sequential steps, but there are steps to it. I guess that's doesn't make sense. If there are steps, it has to be sequential, but there are steps. And so the very first step that you have to take in order to live to your fullest controllable potential is what? The very first step is come to an understanding that where you are today, at this very moment that you're listening to this podcast, okay, is a result of you. Of all the things, the decisions, the actions, the ones that you did take, didn't take, all of that is due to you, to becoming who you are today. Which is in another way of saying you have to take complete responsibility for your life. Where you are today is a result, is an aggregate, is a summation, is a totality of everything you've done to this point. Okay? It's just like an alcoholic or somebody on recovery or whatever. You cannot become your best you until you realize the darkest you, until you've hit essentially rock bottom. Or in other words, until you've taken full responsibility. And so for you, in order to become your fullest controllable potential, to live on that pathway to your personal success, you have to take total responsibility for where you are today. And that requires you to understand that where you are today is a summation of every decision, every action or inaction you've taken in the entirety of your life. Okay? That party you went to instead of studying. Maybe had you studied, you gotten a better grade, advanced in your curriculum, got a better career path. Or the question you didn't ask. Or the gym membership you passed up on. So maybe having passed up that gym membership, you weren't in your fullest physical health, and maybe you got sick that year, which set you a year back on what could have been. Or the person you didn't ask out. Maybe you passed up on your lifelong spouse, him or her. Or maybe it's the action you did take that put you on the path that you are. Okay? All of these things you have to take responsibility for. Take an inventory of your past and prior life up until now, how you lived it, the decisions you made. All those things you have to come to realization that puts you where you are today. Right? Granted, there are some things that are out of your control, that other people have done to you or did you wrong or whatever. But you have to take control of that too, right? Because you can find an excuse on a way out. Hey, they did that to me. It wasn't out of my control. But was it really out of your control? Right? I'll give you a sports analogy. When I played basketball in school, I was point guard, just like my son, and I could put that pass on a dime, meaning like I can really put the pass where it needed to go. Now, I sometimes didn't have my best teammates. Maybe they weren't looking. Maybe they dropped the ball, let it go out of bounds, whatever. Great pass, guys running, great pass, put it right where it needed to be, and he drops the pass, right? That player who dropped the pass, I could say, well, he dropped it. It's a turnover. It was out of my control. He dropped the pass. But taking full responsibility way of it would be, hey, I could have waited. I could have held longer on the pass. I could have maybe passed it a little slower, whatever. Okay. And so anytime I made a turnover even if it wasn't my fault, I would always say my fault. My bad. I could have given you a better pass. Because what is controllable is your reaction or how you respond to bad things. Okay. And that's when I say living to your fullest controllable potential. There are a lot of things out of our control, but how we respond to these things is always entirely in your control. So when things go bad, how do you take responsibility? You can play the victim. Hey, that wasn't my fault. Somebody else did this to me. It's on them. But when you really break it down, if you're active in it, you can find a way to be responsible. And when you do that, and when you take responsibility, then you come to realization that life is totally in your control. And it takes that breakthrough to now understand everything you do leads you down the pathway of your life. Okay, what you do now will result in the life you live 6 months from now, a year from now. You're essentially paying it forward. So the more responsibility, good or bad, you take now will set the trajectory, just like a golf shot. How you angle that club head to the ball is going to send that trajectory way down the fairway. And so a millimeter off here can put you 20 yards off down there. Same thing to your life. It's the analogy. What you do now will set you on a trajectory into the future. And so the inability to take responsibility, right, allows what in the future? Allows you to make excuses for yourself. It gives you a way out. And trust me, success is too hard to give yourself ways out. Because once you give yourself ways out, you'll never realize what it takes to actually win. You're going to blame somebody else. Man, if you'd only caught that pass, I would have gotten an assist in basketball. No, that was my fault. I made a bad pass. Even though it was perfect. Oh, my fault. I didn't read it right. When you take that full ownership, now you're thinking about, okay, how do I actually think and go into situations where I know I can control the outcome? You see, that then unlocks the ability to be wildly successful in the future, taking complete and full responsibility. I'll give you another example. A conversation with my son. He wanted to do certain things. 16 now, driving, a little bit more independent. Wanted to do certain things. His mom wouldn't let him for just some weird, I would say, bonehead reason. But just it had no logic why she wouldn't let him do something. And I said, and he was very upset. She doesn't understand. Oh my God, I can't believe I can't do that, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, how did you explain it to her? He said, well, I explained to her, these certain things that I need to do, but she still didn't understand. I said, well, okay, that's on you. It's still on you to explain it better, to frame the argument or frame the situation where she could understand. But she won't listen. She won't listen. Well, then that's still up to you. It's still up to you to find a way to be more persuasive, to have them listen. And then it dawned on him, yeah, okay, if I framed it a little bit better, maybe she would have been more receptive before the argument got heated up, where then she closed off. Things are always in your control. And again, as I started the podcast, where you are today is entirely a summation of everything you've done up to today, all the decisions you made. Now, part of that, as you take a retrospective look in your life, in this process of taking full responsibility, you're going to find you did some stupid shit. I've done stupid shit. Stuff that I look back, I've done a ton of stupid shit that I look back and I'm like, golly, man, I can't believe you did that. Or golly, I can't believe you said that in that situation. Or golly, I can't believe you did that person wrong like that. That I am totally regretful, embarrassed, shameful, all that stuff. Everybody has that. They're not skeletons in the closet per se, but it's like, damn, I can't believe I did that. Part of taking responsibility is what? If somebody wronged you, and for you to move forward and move on, what do you have to do? It says it in the Bible. You have to forgive them. Your best friend screwed you over, but you value the relationship and you're trying to move on. What do you have to do? You got to forgive them. Your brother, sibling, your mom, your dad, whatever. You got to forgive them. Well, the same applies to yourself. So you see, taking responsibility requires you to forgive yourself. Because once you forgive yourself, now you can move past that shame, embarrassment. I can't believe I did that, man. You're such a bonehead, right? How many of y'all have experienced that feeling? I've experienced it a ton. If I had $1 for every time I screwed up or whatever, did something just stupid and boneheaded, a ton. I could buy another supercar, something like that. But we all do that. We all have that experience, right? But you have to learn to forgive yourself for that in order to take responsibility and move on. Because if not, these things will relive itself in your mind if you let it. And it's like an anchor or a weight that keeps dragging you in the past. So if it's dragging you in the past, how can you ever look forward to living successfully in the future? You got to forgive yourself. That's part of it. So whether you do this exercise or not, on taking full responsibility and trying to live to your fullest controllable potential into the year end, into 2024, and just sprint the rest of your way to your goals and success. The third element of this is that you have to understand, as you're doing this, the world doesn't care. As harsh as it is, the world continues to move on. Regardless of how you feel about yourself, regardless of all the circumstances, regardless of where you are today, the world does not care. The world does not care. I'll give an example. A very sad situation. Major tragic accident, death, where a car hit a kid on a bike near where I live. Sad week, happened earlier this week. Tragic thing. But as I'm driving to work, I'm coming to the studio today, all I can see is people still doing their normal activity. Driving to work, rush hour traffic, another accident here, people getting ready for work. Life moves on. It just continues regardless of how tragic things are. Right? One, because people may or may not be aware of the tragedy. But number two, everybody's got problems. Everybody's got their own problems. So what makes you think you're so good that they're going to be worried about your problems? What kind of hubris is that? To say, man, my problems are worth more than your problems, so you got to pay attention to mine. That doesn't exist. So that's to say, you got to stop playing the victim. The world does not care. The world does not care. When you understand that, you learn, you have that mentality, you kind of build that thick skin where you just keep pushing forward regardless. Let's see, when did I learn that the world didn't care? Probably around high school. Shitty things happen, the world continued to move. I like to say the world still spins, even though many of y'all know my belief on what the world is. The world still rotates. It doesn't stop for anybody, regardless of how bad